If you take the last train often enough, you begin to believe in its mercy. It feels like a corridor built for the tired and the harmless. Factory workers with ink on their sleeves. Nurses unlacing soft shoes. Students asleep against the window. The last train is supposed to deliver you safely to the small square of light you call home. On October 17th at 10:42 p.m., that promise broke. And I was there to see it happen. I did not know Daniel Reyes. Not the way you know a friend. Not the way you know a neighbor. I knew him the way commuters know each other, through ritual. He boarded at Ashbury Station every weeknight. Same gray coat. Same second car. Same window seat facing backward. He always folded his coat carefully, smoothing the sleeves as though the fabric mattered. Daniel worked at Ashbury Printworks, a modest factory near the river. People said he kept to himself, paid rent on time, called his mother every Sunday. He was ordinary, which is precisely why his death still feels like a tear in the fabric of something we all trusted. Ashbury Station at night hums differently than it does during rush hour. The fluorescent lights buzz like tired insects. The digital clock glows red against tiled walls. The air smells faintly of metal and old rain. That night, I sat 2 benches down from Daniel. I pretended to read a paperback but was really watching the platform theater unfold. A woman arguing softly into her phone. A teenager attacking a vending machine with the impatience of youth. And a man in a navy cap pacing back and forth, rehearsing something under his breath. Daniel arrived at 10:39 p.m., right on time. He tapped his transit card twice against the scanner. Always twice. A small rhythm, as if certainty could be manufactured through repetition. The train roared in. Doors opened. We stepped inside. 3 stops later, the lights flickered. That alone meant nothing. The Ashbury line was older than most of the buildings above it. Flickers were part of the ride. You blinked. You adjusted. You moved on. But when the lights steadied, Daniel's seat was empty. First, no one reacted. Empty seats happen. People shift cars. Step off early. Change plans. It was the conductor who noticed something wrong at the next stop. A dark smear near the rear door. Not large. Not dramatic. Just enough to interrupt the smooth monotony of the metal panel. The train had not fully stopped between stations. Security footage later told the rest. The navy cap man had stood too close. One sharp movement. A stumble. A door forced open just enough. Daniel's body was discovered a mile back along the maintenance gravel. The fall killed him instantly. The man in the navy cap was Leonard Hale, 43 years old. Recently fired from Ashbury Printworks. That detail surfaced 2 days after his arrest, when investigators connected his employment records to Daniel's. Witnesses said Hale believed Daniel had taken his position, that Daniel's recent hire had somehow triggered his own dismissal. Records showed something simpler. Daniel had applied months before Hale was terminated. There was no conspiracy, just proximity and resentment. When Hale appeared in court, he did not look like a monster. He wore a pressed shirt, hair combed, hands folded neatly in front of him. He claimed it was an accident, a shove meant only to scare, a moment of anger exaggerated by circumstance. But the CCTV footage told a colder story. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty of second-degree murder. You would think that would be the end. It wasn't. Because a case like this does not end with a verdict. It lingers in the ordinary details. I returned to Ashbury Station weeks later. The clock still glowed red. The train still sighed into place. The vending machine still swallowed coins. But something invisible had changed. Commuters stood a little farther apart. People glanced twice at strangers. The illusion of safety had cracked, and we were all quietly aware of it. I began asking questions. About Leonard Hale, about Daniel Reyes, about how 2 men working in the same factory could end up on opposite sides of a courtroom. Hale had worked at Printworks for 12 years. Reliable, if not remarkable. Divorced. Few close friends. After a company restructuring, his department downsized. He was let go with severance. Daniel had been hired into a different division entirely. There was no replacement, no theft of position, just coincidence twisted into grievance. Former co-workers described Hale as increasingly withdrawn after his termination. He blamed management, then the new hires, then, vaguely, people who didn't deserve it. Daniel may have simply been the nearest symbol of everything Hale felt slipping away. And that is what terrifies me most. Not a criminal mastermind, not a carefully plotted murder, but a man who allowed resentment to ferment until it spilled into violence. I replay that moment in my head often. The flicker of the lights, the subtle shift of bodies, the brief imbalance between two men standing too close. There was no scream, no dramatic confrontation, just gravity doing the rest. True crime rarely looks cinematic from the inside. It looks like a normal evening interrupted by a single irreversible choice. I sometimes wonder if Daniel sensed anything, if he felt the presence behind him grow tense, if he turned slightly before the shove, or if the last thing he saw was only the blur of motion and the sudden rush of air. We will never know. What we do know is this. He folded his coat carefully that night. He tapped his card twice. He followed the same routine that had carried him home safely hundreds of times before. Routine did not save him. The factory installed additional security after the trial. The transit authority reinforced emergency door locks. Policies were reviewed. Statements were issued. But none of those changes reach backward in time. None of them return a son to his mother. I still take the last train home. And sometimes, when the lights flicker, my chest tightens. I scan the faces around me. Ordinary faces. Tired faces. Familiar strangers. I think about how thin the barrier is between routine and rupture. Between standing and falling. Between a man minding his business and another man deciding, for half a second, to push. If you have ever stood on a platform at night, you know the feeling. The sense that everyone is wrapped in their own small world. Headphones in. Eyes down. Thoughts elsewhere. We assume safety because danger has not yet introduced itself. But danger does not always arrive loudly. Sometimes it wears a navy cap. Sometimes it boards the same train. Sometimes it waits 3 stops. And sometimes it chooses the quietest moment to act. What stays with me is not the violence. It was almost mundane in execution. What stays with me is the ordinariness before it. The rhythm of transit cards. The hum of fluorescent lights. The tired electricity of a platform at 10:42 p.m. True crime does not always announce itself with thunder. More often it arrives quietly. It slips into the seat beside you. And it waits for the lights to flicker. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch and listen to this story. Your support, attention, and presence mean more than words can express. Every view, like, and comment helps bring these stories to life. I truly appreciate you for being here. Until the next story, stay safe, stay curious, and thank you for being part of this journey.